MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today we'll be speaking with Pär Lindström, a good friend of mine, who has over 20 years of investment and business development expertise through his focus on venture capital, growth capital, and private equity investments globally. He's also the only guest of this show with a professional athletic record as a former Olympian. He represented Sweden in both the 92 and 96 Olympic Games. We'll discuss how drive, determination, and focus are necessary components to accomplishing audacious goals. Enjoy our conversation. Pär, thank you so much for being with us today on this podcast. I want to ask you a really difficult question. Is it more difficult to become a two-time Olympian swimmer, or is it more difficult to become an advisory board member for MultiGreen Properties?
Well, thank you, Randy, for having me on the show, and thank you for opening up with such an easy question. No, it's actually quite difficult if you think about it. Both of them takes a lot of preparation and a lot of years of training and getting at the very best in your profession to get there. So in swimming, if I look back, I prepared 15 years of training to get to the Olympic Games the first time. So if I then measure what it took me to get to MultiGreen, I've been doing investing for more than 20 years now. So arguably, it was more difficult to get on the board of MultiGreen than to get to the games.
Well, I've got to know you quite well over the last few years, and specifically the last year as an investor of IX shareholders. I guess there's now 60 families that are a part of your IX team. Can you explain a little bit about what you do now at IX and what IX is?
Yeah, so IX Investments is a permanent capital investment vehicle. We have capitalized, as you mentioned, with 60 leading families from around the world. And we're making investments in areas that we combine top-tier returns with what we say profound impact. That's both social impact as well as environmental impact. In my role within this organization, I was part of it as we launched, and my role is Chief Investment Officer.
Wonderful. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the various platforms that IX has backed and invested in?
Absolutely. If you think about our team, we're a generalist team, but we have a broad mandate of investment areas. And also we're stage agnostic. That means we can invest both in early and later stage. The areas where we have invested and deployed capital and also worked, because every time we do make an investment, we work very closely with our companies. And that will be evident also in MultiGreen, I'll touch on that as well. But we have areas such as in the renewable space. We are in the household waste to biofuels or jet fuels area. We have partnered up with one of the leading infrastructure groups in the world to deploy and develop that in Southeast Asia. As you know, with MultiGreen, we are in the attainable and green multifamily housing and that real estate area, which we also have another group that we have back in the Western United States that is doing commercial green real estate or developing that. We also have areas where we have spent a lot of time on but my work is in the insurance space. We have also done it in solar and in the renewable energy space. That is some of these are still developing and some of them are more established. In our efforts to develop this, we've also created a financial services group within IX Investments called IX Securities, which is a broker-dealer that is structured as a 100% owned subsidiary under IX Investments.
That's very intentional how you've structured this from 60 leading families to having it be permanent capital, not a fund, and even thinking far as creating a broker-dealer so that you can represent all of these platforms into the market. So kudos to you and the IX team. Earlier on, you mentioned that you are agnostic from an investment type and structure, whether it's early stage or growth or something that's more established. So that begs the question, what is your religion when it comes to investing? Are you a value investor?
Yes, very much so, Randy. And that is coupled, we do, as you mentioned, early to late stage, but really where I'm coming from in a lot of our investments, whether they are early to late, is from the value investment side and also from a growth perspective. Even if we do something that is later stage, we always have lean in to look for growth and how we can grow them. And that obviously is paramount for a growth capital investment or an earlier stage investment. And I think, my style is very much hands-on. And that has grown out of, I think, from the early days in my career, as I was entering into the investment world, or working with the investment world. I was at Bain, working in private equity groups in Europe and the US. And that really taught me a real tool set to how to go after these opportunities, but also how to think about looking at companies, how to improve the top line as well as the bottom line. And that has served me well throughout my whole career. And that is really a part of the cornerstone of thinking about how we create our platforms, how we invest, how we bring our families into these various deals that fit their investment programs. It's also a way, if I go back to when I was part of a team that was brought in to build out a new sovereign wealth fund in the Middle East called Abu Dhabi Investment Council. In our direct investment group, Global Special Situations, that it was always also the frame or the mindset that we had when we built out and invested and built out our platforms. In order to be successful, I draw my experience both from the athletic world and from investment world. I think you have to set very clear goals, and you have to be very driven and never give up. So, I mean, that's easy to say, but if I just step back a little bit, wherever you are, if you're in a sporting environment or if you're in a business environment where you make investments, you have to get rid of the noise. You have to really focus on what is really important. In sports, you can figure out whichever sport you're in, what is that you need to work on to get to that next level. In business and investing, you need to think about, okay, what are these 10, 20 things that you have on your plate that particular day, and what do you need to cut out? What do you need to focus on in order to get to that success? The day doesn't have enough hours, right? 24 hours is not enough if you don't focus, if you're completely broad and try to cover everything. So that is really important, to be driven, to never give up. See, even if you speak to the sports people out there and also in business, some of the greatest learnings came from failure. Now, I don't believe that you have to have a massive failure to learn, but what I'm trying to say is that you have to have a tenacity to go back and understand that it's okay sometimes to not be spot on, and then learn from that. So next time you don't make that mistake. And if you put that in a continuous cycle and you work with that, you will come out more successful than you'd ever thought you'd ever be. It is a little bit of that practice makes perfect, right? People talk about, but it's really true in there. And it's very easy to get distracted so you don't focus on the core important things. And it's also easy to give up. It's easier to say, okay, I'm done for the day. I'll pick this up the next day or the morning, or I'll take this other path that is easier. The key here is to stay true to yourself and never really give up. That, in my view, creates both a path of execution, and it also creates a knowledge path, because when you are focused and you go deeper to get to that structure or the right investment, you learn a tremendous amount. And I think if I look at what MultiGreen has done, is exactly that. There's a lot of different areas. You may recall in the beginning, Randy, there's a lot of ways we could have taken it. There was a need to get focused. There was a need to really take the weed out of the garden, right? And really ensure that the flowers grow. That, I think, is one of the keys also why MultiGreen has been so successful. And never giving up. There's always things that come your way, but always find ways how to overcome them in order to achieve the ultimate goal.
It's really interesting. I think I was in New York City on March 11th, 2020 at your New York Stock Exchange annual shareholder meeting. And that was the day COVID was announced and the global pandemic. And we were all looking at each other, not knowing what to think, what to expect. And there was despair. There was a lot of investors that were scared. To see where we came from there until now and not giving up, just with that tenacity that you speak of, I'm just blown away that our organization was able to get as much done as they could this year. But you're right, the important principle of never giving up.
Yeah, that's why MultiGreen is a showcase for that. And the focus and execution that it tied into it. It's very impressive.
Well, your fingerprints are all throughout all of these various platforms. We're super excited to be both an investor and a shareholder of IX, and we're very grateful that IX elected to come in and really create the MultiGreen joint venture. You were there at the very first meetings in Las Vegas. I'm very interested to get your insight as the Chief Investment Officer at IX Investments. What attracted you most to the MultiGreen joint venture?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things that came together in the MultiGreen opportunity. And I think what has made it such a special investment and really had such a great start. Number one is the team. And Randy, thanks to your leadership, you have created and what you had in place. And in those days when we started, obviously the ability to get to know you, your team members, the vision, but also the expertise that we lent on in the very beginning from the track records, how it had been executed in the past and where the trajectory where we were going. I think that was fundamental. Then, of course, in our discussions and in our analysis, you had already obviously carved out the gap in the market that we saw and the ability to utilize the strengths of this team to really capture that upside and see very clearly how we could, through our abilities, our combined abilities, generate outside financial returns and also couple that with that really strong impact that we're talking about, both in the attainable housing perspective, but also from the green perspective, to start something off and to create something which we did together and jointly developed and took the best from all of our groups here. That is a process, but in order for it to be successful, you have to have really strong people in all these different pieces that we're pulling together that also can work together, then share the same vision of where to go so you can hit the stride and hit the pace really fast as we scale this up, which MultiGreen has really done with flying colors. That's how I view it. It's what makes, I think, MultiGreen a very special investment from our perspective.
You know, when we got together and met in Las Vegas and in Henderson, Nevada, we hadn't even created a name. We just knew that it would work. And collectively, with Steve Oyer's guidance, we came up with that name, MultiGreen. And on the back of a napkin, basically came to terms on how to move this forward. And if you remember, we thought we would be successful if we just did one transaction in our first year of business. I had no idea that we would be as successful as we have been, in that we've actually done 4 deals in our very first year of business. How does that happen during COVID-19?
I know. It's amazing, right? Thanks to you, Randy, and the leadership you've shown here, but also the different parties that we brought together, that you've been able to make them all blend or come together in one unit. That's when you're able to hit these numbers and these amazing strides that you've made with the company, in my view. We're very excited that we are here with you on this journey. And this has been an absolutely amazing start. And especially, as you pointed out, in such a tough year as 2020.
It's been a lot of fun, and we couldn't have done it without standing on the shoulders of giants, which IX Investments is, and the entire supporting cast that we have at MultiGreen. After funding the MultiGreen venture, we launched from Davos, Switzerland at the 50th Annual World Economic Forum. And you and I had the privilege of attending with a few of the MultiGreen team members. Can you tell our listeners what that experience was like?
I mean, what you just described, it just took me back there, back to when we arrived and when we started that week. What an amazing week! It's obviously anyone who's been there, but even if you haven't been there, it's fairly daunting, right? There's a lot of people, a lot of events, a lot of things moving around, and a lot of people that are looking for not only attention, but also there's a lot of really interesting discussions, presentations, and whatnot. So there's a lot of competition here for, if you will, not necessarily for airtime, but for people to be able to focus on in this case, MultiGreen and the launch. what a special time that was. And what I really remember when we launched MultiGreen and the presentations and the excitement from the audience, but also the camaraderie with the team and seeing how, and this was obviously in the very beginnings, and there was a lot of blocking and tackling, a lot of investor meetings, and a lot of discussions, and a lot of also new ideas about how to maybe do things slightly different. There was just a lot of impressions. It was just great to see the team of MultiGreen really come together, deliver a fantastic, not only just presentation, but a delivery of what MultiGreen was looking to do, what MultiGreen has structured itself for, and its commitment to build multifamily housing. And then see how the team throughout that week was like this team that just relentless, but also gelled even further during that process. So it was a very special time. I feel very privileged to have been part of that.
I look back at it too and think how special it was. And to now realize how instrumental that was in going to Europe and specifically Switzerland. Out of the 4 projects we've done to date, almost every one of them had a very substantial representation of families of IX shareholders that came from specifically Switzerland. And I would have never thought that. And I think going out there to Davos really helped us in that regard because we were able to meet them.
Absolutely. And after Davos, of course, also the follow-up to able to go and see them in specifically their offices or in their, so to speak, hometowns and whatnot. It was a combination that became very powerful. I think we all felt the same, what you just described here. It was, it came together really well. And the icing of the cake was really that we got a lot of support and trust from the various family offices of Switzerland.
So these next 2 questions are going to be fun. This first one is a name association, and I want you to locate green. So in the spirit of MultiGreen, Pär, what are a few of your favorite green things?
To me, trees would be my favorite green thing. And when I say that, it's because of what it gives to humankind, the earth, and our future. It really is at the cornerstone of us being able to continue in a sustainable living and ability to combat climate change. It stands for me also from the renewal every year in a seasonal climate where I was born, Sweden, how after a long winter, the leaves come back and grow back on the trees and spur this every year, this new life in the forest. If you think about the addition of the trees, but also how that the animals and everything. So it's, to me, the green in trees represents so many things that are very close to my heart.
I've only been to Sweden once, and it's so green and beautiful. All those Nordic countries are so beautiful. By the way, Pär, when are we going to Sweden?
You asked me?
Yes, we need to go to Sweden.
There would be a lot of interest from people in the Nordics of what you are creating with MultiGreen. And I actually have been speaking with Steve Oyer quite a lot about it. And we have said that we will be going when the COVID pandemic has become more manageable.
Well, I want to see those trees that you speak of in Sweden. So let's find a time to do that together. I look forward to it. And I also hear they have really great music in Sweden. So I'm looking forward to that. So here's my last question for you, Pär. It is now 2020 and MultiGreen is at the end of its first year of operations. So we publicly launched from Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. You were there. And we announced that MultiGreen would improve the state of the world by constructing 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes. And that we were going to do this by the year 2030. If you had just one wish for MultiGreen, what would it be?
That wish would be that MultiGreen is allowed to flourish and grow as it has shown it can do in its first year, to continue on that trajectory. We're looking at it right now, that it stays on that trajectory, because we know it's never easy to build a company. And we know there's always hurdles in whatever you do in life, whether it's in sports or in building business. But that MultiGreen is allowed to overcome those hurdles and continue this amazing journey it started on. and continue to hit his milestones and achieve them at a faster pace that it already shown that it can. And then obviously ultimately construct the 40,000 attainable multifamily houses, also much more than that. That's what I would be my wish.
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to make your wish come true, Pär. And I'm just so grateful that, you took a calculated bet and you backed this initiative. I'm so grateful that we became an investor of IX a long time ago. And I've really, really enjoyed developing a relationship with you. I feel like we've really connected. And I look forward to checking in with you periodically to see how the MultiGreen progress and report card comes out.
Well, thank you, Randy. It's been really a great journey, and I really look forward to continuing it and the continuation of the development of MultiGreen. I'm very thankful for what you have done and the leadership that you have inspired so many people within your firm to execute and to create what they have so far. And I feel very comfortable about where you're heading for the future.
Well, I look forward to doing this again with you soon, Pär, and thanks for giving us your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.